Right, just back to our usual programming. Just to say that at 1:30 there will be a briefing here by one of our special rapporteurs. And unfortunately, I don't have the note with me, which is my bad. There you go. Thank you, Edie, for paying attention to the program. It's all in the media alert. Just an additional note on Gaza, that the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is deeply concerned about persistent reports of mounting casualties, with the number of Palestinians being killed and injured especially high in North Gaza Governorate, where the Israeli military operations are continuing. In a statement Saturday, Catherine Russell, the UNICEF Children's Fund head, said that more than 50 children had reportedly been killed in Jabalya over the previous 2 days alone, after strikes leveled 2 residential buildings sheltering hundreds of people. Meanwhile, our humanitarian colleagues tell us over the past month, Israeli authorities have only allowed humanitarian access to Jabalya, Beit Lahia, and Beit Hanun on an exceptional basis, leaving us unable to confirm the conditions of people inside, and we worry, obviously, for their safety. OCHA warns that the already limited humanitarian supplies entering Gaza have dwindled even further since October. Private imports are virtually banned, and Israeli authorities are only allowing the use of 3 entry points: Karim Shalom, Gate 96, which is near Deir al-Bala, and Erez West. Furthermore, humanitarian colleagues can only access these border areas by highly dangerous routes. The use of most roads leading to the entry points has either been banned by Israeli authorities or rendered unsafe due to the ongoing hostilities. The routes available are often in poor conditions and prone to armed looting, fueled by the breakdown in public order and safety. Our humanitarian colleagues note that supplies reaching the northern crossings at Erez West can only be sent to Gaza City, as requests to deliver them to besieged areas in North Gaza Governorate are being consistently denied and rejected. For its part, the World Food Programme warns that as winter approaches, the lack of food and other vital humanitarian supplies entering the Gaza Strip could soon escalate into famine unless immediate action is taken. In October, the World Food Programme has only been able to reach 42% of the 1.1 million people targeted for food assistance in Gaza, with reduced rations due to dropping aid level. Moving north to Lebanon, just an update from our UNIFIL colleagues who note with continued concern the airstrikes by Israel Defense Forces across Lebanon over the weekend, including in the south, in Sidon, in Baalbek, and Beirut, resulting in several casualties. In southern Lebanon, the peacekeepers report that IDF operations have continued, involving clashes with Hezbollah. Meanwhile, they also report that Hezbollah has continued to launch drones and dozens of rockets south into Israel. The increasing impact on civilians is of grave concern, and we condemn the loss of civilian life. All actors must adhere to international law and protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. UNIFIL premises are also continue to be impacted. On November 2nd, a UN position near Markaba in Sector East sustained damage to its prefabricated containers and perimeters caused by nearby demolition operations being taken by the IDF. A nearby explosion also damaged a UN vehicle at the Nakura headquarters, with no injuries reported. We once again remind all actors of the inviolability of UN premises and their responsibility to protect UN peacekeepers. We urge all parties to halt the violence immediately. The United Nations continues to support efforts towards a ceasefire and diplomatic solution. On the humanitarian front, in several parts of Lebanon, the UN has been operating. Today, UNRWA delivered medical supplies and fuel for generators at the Bur Shamali Palestinian refugee camp in Tyre, in the southern part of Lebanon. For its part, UNICEF also delivered emergency supplies to displaced men, women, and children in Tyre, in other parts of Tyre, including those supplies included hygiene and dignity kits. On Saturday, a humanitarian convoy delivered food and hygiene kits to displaced people in collective shelter in the Baalbek Hermel area. A convoy delivered medical supplies to the Labwe Primary Health Care Center in the same area today. The Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warns that the humanitarian situation in the country has reached levels that exceeded the severity of the 2006 war amid escalating hostilities. The health sector continues to face relentless attacks, with facilities, staff, and resources increasingly caught in the crossfire, further straining Lebanon's already fragile health infrastructure. Yesterday, an Israeli airstrike near Tibnin Hospital in Beit Jabal district in Nabatea caused extensive damage to a hospital, injuring dozens of people. Additionally, a separate airstrike near Baalbek Hospital significantly damaged the facility. Since October of last year, WHO says 110 healthcare workers have been killed while on duty. There have been at least 60 attacks on healthcare facilities over the past 13 months. You will have noted that yesterday we issued a statement in which the Secretary General said he was very concerned about reports of troops from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea being sent to the Russian Federation, including their possible deployment to the conflict zone. This would represent a very dangerous escalation of the war in Ukraine. He said, everything must be done to avoid internationalization of this conflict. The Secretary General also reiterated his support for all meaningful efforts towards a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace in Ukraine, in line with the UN Charter, international law, and resolutions of the General Assembly. Staying on Ukraine, our colleagues from our humanitarian office tell us that since the start of November, multiple attacks in the Kharkiv area, which is the country's second largest city, have injured dozens of civilians and first responders. That's what local authorities and partners on the ground are telling us. Multiple apartment buildings and commercial establishments have been damaged. Complementing the efforts of first responders, aid workers have provided first aid and psychological support and organized hot meals for those impacted in the attacks. They've also delivered shelter materials, warm blankets, and solar lamps. Since the beginning of the month, Ukrainian authorities have also reported several casualties in the regions of Kherson, Donetsk, Dnipro, and Sumy. In the capital, Kyiv, and in the southern regions of Kherson, several national and international aid organizations are working to provide assistance. And this morning, the Security Council held a meeting on non-proliferation in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Our colleague Khaled Kyari, the Assistant Secretary General in the Department of Peacebuilding and Political Affairs, briefed on behalf of the Secretariat. He said the DPRK's launch of yet another intercontinental ballistic missile is one of serious concern and represents a grave threat to regional stability. Despite numerous meetings of the Council in the past 2 years, he added, the DPRK has not heeded calls to refrain from further launches. Mr. Kyari encouraged all members of the Security Council to seek unity and to create an environment conducive to dialogue and cooperation. At this challenging juncture for securing global peace and security, he said, it is imperative to prioritize de-escalation and to work towards a stable and secure Korean peninsula. He also called on the country's authorities to facilitate on the DPRK's authorities to facilitate the full return of the UN resident coordinator as well as the UN country team to Pyongyang. Also, yesterday evening, morning, we circulated an update on Rosemary DiCarlo's travels. The Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs wrapped up a visit to Japan. While there, she discussed with senior officials concerning developments on the Korean Peninsula, including the recent DPRK launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile. She also, as well as the reported involvement of DPRK troops alongside forces of the Russian Federation and the abduction of Japanese nationals by the DPRK. She and Japanese officials also discussed the situation in Afghanistan, the Middle East, Myanmar, Sudan, among others. Turning to West and Central Africa, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs informs us that the region continues to experience catastrophic flooding, with more than 7 million people impacted across 16 countries. Chad, Niger, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of the Congo have been the most affected. The floods are compounding existing challenges resulting from conflicts and previous natural disasters. We and our partners continue to support countries' response by providing food, clean water, cash assistance, shelter support, and healthcare services, but these efforts are severely limited by the lack of resources. The Acting Emergency Relief Coordinator, Joyce Masuya, has allocated $38.5 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to support Cameroon, Chad, the DRC, Niger, as well as the Republic of Congo. The amount exceeds the total amount of SURF funding for responding to flood over the past 4 years. Our colleagues warn that the situation is likely to worsen, particularly in Central Africa, where the rainy season continues through next month. And in the DRC, our peacekeeping colleagues have launched the first round of a 2-week training of the trainers session designed for the commanders of the Southern Africa Development Community Mission in the DRC. The program will cover a comprehensive range of topics vital to peacekeeping operations, including human rights, international humanitarian law, protection of civilians, human rights due diligence, child protection, and conflict-related sexual violence, among others. The program is also linked to the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2746, which mandates the peacekeeping mission of the UN to strengthen their Southern Africa Development Community counterparts through coordination, information sharing, and logistical assistance. Our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed convened a retreat at Green Tree on mental health in humanitarian settings. This was hosted by Julia Gillard, the former Prime Minister of Australia and chair of the Wellcome Foundation and the UN Partnerships Office in WHO, the UN Children's Fund, and the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The retreat convened mental health experts from governments, NGOs, UN entities, academia, and the private sector to discuss the acceleration of mental health, psychosocial support, and humanitarian settings for communities, as well as humanitarian workers and caregivers. And today, the Secretary General, in a pre-recorded video message, addressed the World Urban Forum, which started in Cairo and continues until November 8th. In his message, he noted that world leaders have just adopted the Pact of the Future, which calls for ensuring adequate, safe, and affordable housing for all, and supporting developing countries to plan for and implement safe, just, and healthy, accessible, resilient cities. His message is shared with you. Also, our colleagues at the Counter-Terrorism Office are holding a high-level conference today and tomorrow in Kuwait City. The conference, entitled Strengthening International Counterterrorism Cooperation and Building Agile Border Security Mechanisms, the Kuwait phase of the Dushanbe process, that's the name, is co-organized by the Counterterrorism colleague along with the state of Kuwait and Tajikistan. The conference provides a platform for strengthening regional and international cooperation on border security in the context of counterterrorism. You can find more information on the website of the Counterterrorism Office. We have a new humanitarian coordinator for Honduras. The Secretary General has appointed our friend Alejandro Alvarez of Argentina as the new resident coordinator. That follows the government's approval. He brings over 20 years of experience in law, peace building, and human rights. He was previously the resident coordinator in Algeria. And I want to end on a happy note. As you know, the marathon was held in New York, and we're very proud that one of our colleagues probably set a record for a UN runner. Security Officer Duncan Nyasinga finished in just 2 hours and 34 minutes and 23 seconds. He came in first in his age group, 40 to 49. He was the 11th Kenyan to cross the finish line and the 191st man to cross the finish line. So we're proud of him and we congratulate him. Yay, let's clap about, find something to clap about. All right, Edith Leder, Associated Press.
Thank you, and definitely congratulations to him. Steph, first, Israel sent a letter to the General Assembly terminating the agreement with UNRWA. What is the Secretary General's reaction to that? And secondly, when you said that the Secretary General says everything must be done to prevent the internationalization, Who's he been talking to? What's he been doing to try and prevent this?
I mean, he had a meeting with President Putin where they discussed the war, and we put out a very official readout. Yes, my mic is on. Can you hear me? Yeah. He recently met with President Putin and remains in touch with various parties. Pam, and then Michelle. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Anwar. Yes, sorry. Short. I have the memory of a goldfish. We've seen the letter addressed to the President of the General Assembly. I mean, our position is unchanged, right? For the Secretary General, he continues to believe that the work of UNRWA is performing in the occupied Palestinian territory is essential, and that there is no alternative to UNRWA as we see it. If the law is fully implemented, right, and Israel makes it impossible for UNRWA to continue to operate in those areas, notably, and reminder that it's not just humanitarian, it's education, it's healthcare. They will have, this will not have, if the law is fully implemented, and UNRWA makes it the Israeli government makes it impossible for UNRWA to operate, this will have no effect on Israel's responsibility to provide for the population, and any failure to provide the necessary support to the population will be Israel's responsibility. We're obviously, our lawyers and UNRWA's lawyers are also taking a closer look at the letter. Pam, then Michelle.
Yes. First, two separate issues. One is there are reports that there are clashes between North Korea and Ukraine in Ukraine. And can you comment on that? And second, totally separate, which is COP16. The Secretary General was there, encouraged them to move forward on biodiversity, but the conference ended this weekend without the fund for biodiversity. Is he disappointed?
I think you could do a compare and contrast with what the Secretary General has called on the member states to come up with. Obviously, I think they put out a pretty comprehensive press release. There were some things in there that that moved the process forward, and I will leave it at that. Sorry, yes, I keep forgetting. This is why you shouldn't ask me two questions at the same time. What was on DPRK troops? I would refer you back to the statement. I haven't seen those particular reports at this point. Michelle.
I'll ask you one question, fairly direct, on UNRWA.
Simple words, please. Yeah.
On UNRWA, while the laws that were adopted last week don't come into effect until late January, the cancellation of this 1967 exchange of letters is effective now. Mm-hmm. So can UNRWA will UNRWA operate without this agreement?
UNRWA is continuing to operate today. Abdelhamid and Serife.
Thank you. On Saturday morning, Israel kidnapped Imad, his name is, he's a captain in the Lebanese Navy, from his home in Patron in the northern of Lebanon. Do you have any comment on that hijacking or kidnapping someone from his home? Can you label that as state-sponsored terrorism?
I mean, we've seen, we're aware of these press reports, and we're also very concerned about some of the allegations that UNIFIL was somehow involved in this. And I can tell you that the peacekeepers were in no way involved in facilitating the operation. And I think this kind of disinformation that we've seen is also puts our peacekeepers at great risk. What we want to see is an end to this conflict. Your next question, if you had one. Nope. Okay. Serife.
Thank you. Stéphane, I want to ask you, the permanent mission of Turkey sent a joint letter on behalf of 52 member states and 2 international organizations calling for a halt to arms transfers to Israel, and it asks for immediate steps to be taken to hold the provision or transfer of arms, munitions, or other equipment where there is suspicion that it may be used in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. So what is the Secretary General's reaction to this joint letter?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen the letter, I've seen press reports. If the letter calls for action by member states, and it's up to member states to act.
Would the Secretary General support such a
Look,
call?
I think what we've always said is that in terms of weapons transfer anywhere in the world, I think those countries that supply weapons to parties in a conflict have a moral responsibility to ensure that they are not used in violation of international law. Miriam, and then we'll go to the back.
Thanks, Steph. I'm sure you saw the videos of the university student in Tehran taking her clothes out to protest against compulsory hijab. And she was harassed by the university security. What is the UN stance on the detention of that student? And also, has UN communicated with the Iranian authorities regarding this incident?
Look, I don't know if there was any communications as of yet. I can tell you that the video is very disturbing. The reports of the arrest of this young woman is extremely disturbing. I think it's important for the Iranian authorities to make it clear as to where she is. I think our human rights colleagues are trying to gather a bit more information on exactly what happened during this incident. But I can tell you, whether it's the High Commissioner for Human Rights or the Secretary General, in his very recent report to the General Assembly on human rights in Iran, has repeatedly called on the Iranian government to eliminate all forms of gender-based discrimination and violence, and that any person, and especially a woman or girl who's being arbitrarily detained for expressing herself, should be released immediately. And the issue of human rights is one that the Secretary General has repeatedly discussed in his bilateral meetings with Iranian officials. Madame.
When does the new head of OCHA, Tom Fletcher, I believe, when does he actually begin?
I think within the next 2 weeks or so.
There's no date?
There is a date, but there's not one that I know for certain. I know from what I know he's told me that he wanted to start as quickly as possible, and I think it will be within the next 10 days or so. Signore, dottore.
Grazie mille. Stéphane, tomorrow elections in the United States. Somebody think,
Really?
Yes. Somebody
Thanks for the reminder, Stefano. Yeah.
Well, I was waiting for somebody to ask.
Yeah,
Nobody asked, so that's why I'm asking. For somebody, it's the most important day for democracy in the world ever. What the Secretary General think about tomorrow? Is it just a normal election or is it a special?
Look, I mean, as I think the Secretary General said in his, I think it was during the General Assembly, where he said half of the world's population has gone or will go to the ballot box this year, but everyone on this planet will be impacted. And it is clear that elections for the President of the United States has a global impact and have for quite some time. So of course it's an important election. Okay, any questions online? Dawn, I think I see a yellow hand up there on the screen.
Yes, that's my yellow hand. I just wanted to ask about a post from Dr. Tedros. He said from November 1 on X, he met with Sigrid Kaag. Doesn't say where, but I was just wondering if you had any more detail about their meeting.
I do not, but I can always ask, or you could ask WHO. We could both ask and see who gets an answer first.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Just a reminder, 1:30 p.m. to confirm ED's information. There'll be a briefing here by the Special Rapporteur of Minority issues, Nicolas Levra. See you tomorrow.